about, dedicated to cover the topic of remote vendor access in very modern way, but also very secure way for third-party vendors into our organization. So first of all, thank you very much for joining the session. I know it's the end of the year, it's very busy, but I think it's valuable to see what is the new way we can cover such critical aspect like the vendor access to the IT infrastructure, but also to OT. If we do have the industrial environment like ICS, SCADA, then it's also worth to think about how to do it in the most secure way possible. So in last month, we've had a lot of meetings with our customers, prospects, partners, where we wanted to also understand where are we currently with privileged third-party access. And what we figure out, first of all, is that I would split two different kinds of external accesses. For one is usually our contractors, like our, let's say, employees who work for us for everyday basis, statically usually. We give them some devices like laptops, mobile devices, maybe some tokens like RSA tokens or other multi-factor authentication tools, VPN applications, so on, so on. So as they work for us for long term, so usually is the static approach, and security here is, I would say, usually in quite high level. So it's not a big problem. The real problem, which we've heard a lot from our customers in last years, is the access for third-party vendors who require immediate access, in many cases short-term access to your or our environment, to our infrastructure. Yeah, to do something like to manage some systems, to upgrade something, to expand our competencies, to improve organizational efficiencies. But to do it, in many cases, I would say it's something like a necessary evil. Yeah, we need it, but we would like to do it securely. Yeah, that there is so much external access into our infrastructure that it's really important to secure it in the proper way. What we also do see based on these meetings is this access in many cases is unsecured, and it's really difficult to track and manage. Why? Because first of all, it's unsecured and difficult to track because if we give immediate access for the third-party vendor employee, and we need to do it immediately, in many cases, we don't have the time to define proper procedures for MFA, like we don't have a time in the minutes or hours to provide them the token, some hardware token, or define properly second factor of the authentication. So based on our experience, we see for this purpose, usually is something like the password from the domain LDAP or created locally user for jump server, for instance, and this person remotely is using this shared password, which first of all is not secure at all, and secondly, it's really difficult to track because we are not sure if the person who is logging into the environment, if he or she is really the same person. Maybe the account and the secret was already shared with some other employee, or even worse, maybe it was compromised by some external hacker who is now establishing the session into the environment. Third point, which was also confusing, it's in many cases nowadays, vendors do need to have the dynamic access into the environment. So the workflow is really dynamic. And based on the discussions, what we do see, which is still quite common for third-party vendor access, first of all, is usually VPN, so virtual private network, which is used to encrypt the traffic through the internet. It may be client-side VPN, it may be site-to-site VPN, doesn't matter. But usually we are using it as the, let's say, first layer of the security for the remote vendor access. In some cases, that's it. So I think it's really bad approach, because then compromising station means we are able to compromise the elements of the infrastructure which we do have the permission from the third-party vendor side. In some cases, we do see additional layers of the security, like the jump server approach. I don't know, we are deploying the Microsoft Windows server as the jump server. And then actually is the next island hop for the intruder to compromise this jump server and do the lateral movement in the environment, but it's still better than nothing. Or we are covering it with some additional tools like the VDI, for instance, virtual desktop infrastructure, which is also not built for this purpose, in my opinion. But in most cases, generally, we cannot have the static idea of, I don't know, access list of on the VPN or some perimeter firewall where we specify to what IP or ports this specific vendor may have an access to, because what we do see in many cases, external vendors, they are changing the systems they are working on. Like today, I need to have an access to the element A, tomorrow maybe it will be element C or D. So just to be sure that no one will wake us up during the night with access, okay, can you give me now permissions to the system number E? So usually we will give them permissions with some range of IP addresses from the security point of view. Also, it's not the best practice. Last but not least, very important point is how we are able to provide the registration for the user, and actually how we can do the provisioning of the user. So if you will have different layers of security, like I mentioned, the VDI, VPN, jump server, there is AD and LDAP, and maybe something more. What we do hear from the customers, usually this request to proceed with the request, it takes around days or even weeks to proceed it, approve it by IT, by team responsible for VDI, team responsible for VPN. And in many cases, we need it in the minutes or hours when talking, not about these contractors, but talking about the third-party vendors. It's really important to have the secure environment, but which will be available, which will be active in around minutes or hours, not days or months. This is very important. And as I mentioned, if we will use the static approach of, for instance, VPN technology, which was invented in 1996, as far as I remember, so it's quite old technology, and time is moving, and now the infrastructure is different, and the approach for third-party vendors is different. So if we are using such static approach, it means that compromising the station, the endpoint of the third-party vendor, means that hacker will compromise these enterprise resources, IT or OT resources, which were accessible for this specific person. It's really important, in my opinion, to cover this topic properly and effectively. Also, if we think not only from the customer side, who would like to cover this access, but if we as customer, we would give this access to third-party vendor, reseller, integrator, what does it mean? We should think about it if it will be possible for this specific group of people to install our elements of the infrastructure on their stations quickly. Because if we have bigger reseller, bigger vendor, so most probably they have their own security policies on the stations. Some GPO, some app locker, maybe they are using our solution, which is called Endpoint Privilege Manager, to do the least privilege on the stations, to elevate privileges to specific applications, to whitelist and blacklist applications. And if we are using trusted VPN agents, so most probably they will be able to install it. But if we are using something exotic, which is not trusted by the policy of this particular third-party vendor, so maybe they will need again some time to proceed with the request to install something new on the operating system. Maybe they already have a lot of VPN agents for different customers, and there may be some issue with the compatibility between the versions. So all of these topics means that it's pretty difficult to do it quickly, but also in a secure way. And last point, but very important, is also if we do have system which is covering the privilege access security, like CyberArk is doing in the best possible way for local environments. So if we already have the core privilege access security, which is rotating secret, isolating the session, monitoring, recording identifying risk related to privileged access, and also doing the remediation. So if something is wrong, we can react, we can remediate. And we would like to use this system additionally with VPNs and other technologies. What does it mean for customers? In many cases, wow, they say, it's great, it would be great to use it, but it's really too expensive to cover all of the topics related to the licenses for Core PAS, for VPNs, and maybe additional systems. So we should optimize it also from the cost perspective. So just to summarize, what are the top requirements from our customers nowadays related to this third-party remote vendor access, and how it should work in the with this perfect solution? First of all, we would like to have it without any agents or any hardware installed on the third-party vendor site, laptop, or in the infrastructure, like in the network of third-party vendor. It would be just easier, quicker, and better faster for both sides. So it's win-win situation if we would be able to do it, but in the same time, yeah, encryption should be in the proper, implemented in the proper way. Secondly, no secrets, like no shared passwords, no SSH keys. Why? Because they may be shared, not only internally on the vendor side or the reseller side, but also externally. And I've seen at least several situations when by mistake someone sent the shared secret to customer side with the VPN to somebody else outside of the company because of the mail mistake. So we would like to guarantee that this solution will not require any passwords to provide this access. And last but not least, this complicated provisioning. We really would like to cover this topic to be compliant with the good practice, which now is, I think, is one of the practices which customers want to implement, which is called JIT, just in time. So we would like to, on one hand, we would like to deliver the least privilege approach to our third-party vendors, but do it quickly, without processing it for the days or the weeks in our local environment. Based on these requirements, we have invented our own technology, which is called Alero. Alero is the product of CyberArk. It's not the acquisition, but we wrote it from scratch. We invented the idea of new approach for third-party vendor access to the environment, which is combined with three ideas. First of all is the biometric authentication on both sides, on the customer side, but also on the third-party vendor side. So biometric authentication, but in the same time, zero trust access without any agent. So we don't want to have any agent on the laptop because, as I said, it's difficult to manage, it's difficult to be installed. There may be different versions. So zero trust, biometric authentication, and last but not least, this just-in-time access and provisioning for the user. So Alero is that solution which is part of the core privilege access security pillar of CyberArk. As I mentioned, in many cases, customers start with the pillar of core privilege access security, where they deploy the vault, digital vault, the heart of the enterprise, where they onboard all of the or most of the privileged accounts into the vault. And because of that, they are able to define the policies of who do have an access to what accounts and when, what situations, how they can use this account. And in the backend, system is able to automatically rotate all of the secrets like SSH keys, passwords, etc. So we have great single sign-on, I would say, in front to our privileged access, and in the backend, something like the one-time password automatically delivered for not only for user to machine communication, but also we have the pillar of application access management for the application to application requests and connectivity. So we are able to manage the accounts, but also we are able to manage the session and all the access into the accounts. What does it mean? We are able to isolate the session of the user. So the user will authenticate securely to the vault. We choose the account which should be used for the connection, what application should be used, and we will establish the second, this time privileged session to the protected server. So we assume that sooner or later the station of the user, doesn't matter if the user is internal or external, may be compromised. With this approach, I think is that with this approach we have the highest security level possible, because even if there is some malware on the station, this malware will never have information about the privileged account and privileged secret to be used to send some information to the server or get some data from the server. We are able to...
Bartosz,
yes?
may I take a minute of your attention? Are you on Wi-Fi, on wireless network?
Yes, I am.
Maybe it's a good idea to change your location, maybe to sit closer to the router, because we have some lags and jitters and in sound, and quite low sound quality. So
okay, give me a second.
Can you do something with this? Thank you.
Yes, sure. Okay, so I will do as following. I will just am I able to call into the session, not use the audio for internet? Is it possible? Thanks.
Yes, you can do it. You can switch to telephone.
Okay, so give me a second.
And dial in.
Great. Let me just check if I am able to do it. Audio settings. Switch to phone audio. Great. Okay, so let me just call into this number and I will be in a second available back.
Коллеги, прошу прощения за техническую задержку. Сейчас попробуем поправить звук.
Great. Hello. Are you able to hear me now?
Yes. Okay. Let's proceed.
Is it? Yes. Perfect. Thank you very much for this information. I hope it's better now. So let's proceed. So as I mentioned, usually we start the path of core privilege access security with the Core PAS technology to cover the topic related to privilege sessions for internal employees, and then we would like to expand it to the third-party vendors, and this is perfect fit here for Alero solution to be used. So let's discuss the architecture and what is the plan of using the Alero solution for third-party vendor access. Let's make some assumptions first. So as I mentioned, we don't want to use any applications installed on the endpoints. Also, we don't want to use any secrets like the shared passwords on the endpoint of the user of the third-party vendor. Let's put an additional assumption. We don't want to open any ports or IP addresses into the inbound communication from the internet to our Core PAS solution, to not generate additional risk, to not get the hacker additional option to get into the Core PAS environment and compromise some data or establish the session. So I don't want to change anything in the demilitarized zone. I don't want the inbound traffic to be as it would be with a VPN solution needed to get access from the client to the concentrator. We don't want to do it in the environment. To be able to do so, what we are going to deploy, and we are doing it on customer side, we install the element which is called the Alero connector. Alero connector is installed usually on the Docker container because it's very fast to be installed. Really, it's just 3 commands to be typed in the operating system, like Ubuntu 18.04. We are enabling this Alero connector, and Alero connector will establish for us the outbound connection from, for instance, the militarized zone with our forward proxy or without it, if you don't have it, to our something called Alero service, which is cloud-based, which is hosted in the AWS in Europe, but is managed by us, of course. What is important to mention here, if there is anybody in the room who is afraid of clouds and trusts only in the sun, there is nothing like secrets, private data, passwords, etc. in the cloud. It's just the service for the provisioning of the user. I will show it later on. There is nothing to be afraid of because it's not typical service where you need to host all of the data, and then you would have any risk that there is some magic proxy which is taking all of your privilege activities of the users. So we'll get into the architecture discussions later on. And last but not least, of course, we have the remote vendor who would like to have an access. So if I am the person responsible for providing the remote access on customer side, to get this access, I just need to log in to the CyberArk Alero service in the cloud, and I need to invite a new vendor. So typing a couple of parameters like the username, first name, last name, and additional parameters for the user who I would like to invite into the environment, assigning the permissions, so on and so on. And then remote vendor will receive an email with the invitation. After clicking the link, the remote vendor will be redirected with the browser to Alero IO service, which is this cloud-based service in AWS. And there will be the QR code with information. Please download the mobile application into your mobile smartphone. So it may be either Android, it may be iOS-based operating system. And we are downloading the application from the Google Store or the Apple Store. We're downloading the application called CyberArk Alero. After downloading this application, we need to register it with the mobile phone number, which we type during the registration, and we will register the user, so we will know that this person is really the person who should have an access to the environment. And then, after opening the application, on one side, the application will scan with the camera the QR code to understand to what application this user would like to have an access to, and on the opposite side, the mobile will authenticate user based on the biometric authentication. So it may be the fingerprint, it may be the face recognition. So this is the difference, in my opinion, between the approach of having some passwords, keys, etc., where they potentially can be shared. Here you cannot share the face or cannot share the fingerprint. So it's much more secure, in my opinion. And after this authentication, the application in the browser, on the laptop or some static workstation, user will be redirected to the Alero service, and on the Alero service, user will be able to choose what application he or she should have an access to. So in most cases, it will be the CyberArk portal, CyberArk Core PAS portal, which is on-prem in customer environment. Just to summarize here, what is very important is, first of all, the user will establish the session into the Alero service, but Alero connector will also establish the session to Alero service. So no inbound traffic is needed from Alero service to Alero connector. I think it's very important. And also we can get into the details later on. The encryption is done end-to-end from the remote vendor to Alero connector. So there is no, let's say, magic proxy inside which could terminate the session in the Alero AWS service. If you would like to get additional details, the technical details about the algorithms, protocols, and the way we are authenticating and encrypting the session, we have a very nice document about it, which we can share with you after the session. What is important, after establishing the session to this CyberArk Core PAS portal, we are able to choose the account which you would like to use. I don't know, I would like to maybe access to domain controller to change something because I'm the remote vendor who deployed the domain, and now we need to change something, put some additional configuration, etc. Maybe some database, whatever, yeah, some element which we which you classified as the privilege we can cover with this Core PAS approach. From the security point of view, as I mentioned, there are no agents on the endpoint. This is really cool and really fast to be deployed, and no passwords. On the mobile device, we need the application, but usually it's much faster to download from the App Store the application than ask someone for the local administrative rights on the endpoints to install the application properly and check if there is the compatibility between the versions of the application. There is only biometric authentication without any passwords, which is also valuable. As I mentioned, the end-to-end encryption is really cool, and JIT, which is just-in-time access, because we just need it in one place to define these permissions for the user. No need to do it in a couple of places like VPN, AD, and maybe something else like the jump server. Everything was created here. Alero service is protected by CyberArk with our best practices for the protection. We are responsible for protecting it against the attacks. And also what is important here, in the cloud, there are only public data. Actually, there are two parameters which may be classified as something in the middle between the public and the private, but usually you can find them somewhere else, is the mobile phone number, which you need to provide to register the mobile device, and is the email address of the remote vendor, which will be used to send the invitation to. The rest is, it's like the first name, last name of the user, so nothing special. What is really important here is to mention that the authentication on the mobile device is done on the operating system level of the mobile device. So we are using for it something called the secure enclave on the iOS level, or in Android is called, I think, TEE, so trusted execution environment. It's fully isolated, so we do not send any data, any private data for the authentication into the cloud level. Everything is based on the mobile. Okay, so let's give it a shot and see how it is working from the real life experience. I have recorded short demo for you. So now let's imagine a situation. We have two mobile devices and two users. It's me, Bartek Ryński, who is on the customer side, and I would like to invite the vendor. So on the right side, you do see the screen mirroring from my mobile device. In this case, it's some iOS device. So I just put some screen mirroring into the page, and you see the Alero authentication site. So I need to scan my Face ID, you see it now, and scan the QR code, which is on the Alero portal, to be able to invite the third-party vendor. So you do see here now my portal, which on the right side we do have some connectors. So this is the local connector in my on-prem environment, and I see a couple of sites here. So this BKRY is my site with my application, so like CyberArk Core PAS, this proxy which is isolating the session, recording the session, rotating secrets, etc., etc. And I would like to provide additional access to third-party vendor to this specific site, to this specific portal. So let's see how I could do it. I can just go into this application, directly to the CyberArk Core backend application, and I will just invite the new vendor. So we'll just use the option of the vendor invitation. Let's specify a couple of parameters. What is the vendor name, the name of the company, first name, last name, the company email address, mobile phone number. As I mentioned, these two are important for the registration purposes. And then we can specify typical technical parameters, like if you or me, if I should approve any access for this user, what is the time frame between what date and what date this user should have an access to, if this user is able to invite any other users, and what permissions this user will have. And that's it, basically. As you see, it was a couple of seconds. Now, user Grzegorz, he received an email with the invitation, so he is able just to click the link. He's having the QR code and information, download the application from the App Store or Google Store. So I have already downloaded it. You see on the right side now is the mirror from the second screen. There is notification if I would like to do the push messages for this application. I'm authenticated with the biometry, and the first step is the registration of the mobile. So I specified my mobile number here, and now what I need to wait for is the SMS for this specific phone number with the one-time code to be sure that we are really on the device which should have an access to Alero service. So the authentication here is based on the phone number which is used for the registration. As you see, I received the verification code, so I type it here. I create the new account and specify the parameters which were used for the registration. Like in this case, Grzegorz with very easy last name, family name, which is called Brzęczykiewicz. Great. So we have the user created. We can put additional photo. It's not required. Send the PIN code. The PIN code is not for everyday basis. It's just for the recovery procedure if it's needed. And now we are able to scan the QR code from the browser, and now we will be registered in the service. As you see, we successfully joined our tenant, our EMEA tenant in the portal. Now, if I am the third-party vendor, to get access to this tenant and my environment, I just need to authenticate myself and scan this QR code. And as you see, I have an access to this application. And with this one click, there is the full encryption, the full tunnel established to my portal. And now, just to make it clear, where are we now? We have established the connection through the internet without VPNs, but in a very secure way, from my laptop to the PVWA, which is called the Password Vault Web Access. So this is the portal for CyberArk on-prem Core PAS solution, which is in my local environment. And as I mentioned, there is no inbound traffic allowed. So only with this outbound traffic through the connector, we were able to establish this session. And what is valuable here, first of all, I have the full accountability, so I understand that it was Grzegorz who established the session to this portal. This full session will be encrypted additionally and recorded. We can choose what application I would like to use to establish session to, for instance, domain controller or something else like the database, some file share or something else. And we establish this session through the proxy, which is called Privileged Session Manager. But additionally, we will encapsulate this traffic like RDP, SQL, or something else into the HTML5. Why? To be able to do it through SSL. To have this only one port used and only browser without downloading any RDP files or anything else, we are using only browser, only HTML traffic, and as you see inside, there is the RDP session encapsulated. It may be RDP, it may be SQL or something else. So we have the full visibility to the session. You can define the least privilege approach here. If the third-party vendor is doing something bad now, something which was not trusted, like changing something in the registries or opening this Windows PowerShell, you see that the session now was suspended. So I cannot close the window. I cannot do a thing, basically. Yeah, the session is suspended. So if we now jump into the security auditor pair of shoes, so you will see in the security event, this is the dashboard for security events, that there is new event that user George on the domain controller, he used the xadmin account, which is the domain administrator, and opened some bad application. So if you agree with it, so you can resume the session. If you don't agree with it, you can go into the monitoring, join the session. So you can see that there is some new session, which is very risky. We are classifying the risk of the session. You can just watch what happened here. So the session is fully indexed. So we have the metadata with indexing. We can get into the session passively or actively. We can watch the session or type something to this user. Don't do it again because I will kill your session. If it doesn't work, so you can just get here and either suspend the session or terminate it. So after being terminated, the session is closed for this particular user, as you see it now. And we can then go to the recordings and really watch what happened, not only from the metadata perspective, but also from the video perspective. So you can search for specific event to be recognized. You can choose that this particular event to be played, and you will see now we are able to watch the session. You can skip idle time. You can zoom in, zoom out. You can do whatever you want to have the proof. I don't know, in the court maybe to have the proof that something happened wrong in your infrastructure. So just to summarize it, what we've done now. First of all, we established a really secure connection with the different layers of the encryption. I will explain it in the next slide how it is working with very secure way, but also very fast way with this biometric authentication through this Alero service into the PVWA, into the CyberArk portal, and then from customer side, you have accountability, which is critical in my opinion. You have the session isolation. So we can guarantee that never on this third-party vendor station, he will not be able to fetch any secret for your privileged account. So even if there will be some malware on the station already, and this malware wants to propagate in the environment, it will not be able to take any SSH key password of the privileged account, like the domain administrator, or SQL administrator, or anything else which is critical for your infrastructure, IT or OT. If this malware would like to propagate with this particular SSL session to join to the session, so we have this least privilege. We can control the session. We can automatically react, remediate, as you see now on the slide. It's one of the examples. If we would see some strange behavior of the user, like creating the backdoor accounts, changing the passwords manually because I'm the domain administrator, we can detect such situation, risky situation, and we can remediate automatically, like reset passwords, onboard account, manage them, and guarantee no one will be able to use them without our permissions. And of course, I think this recording is greatly valuable for the solution. From the architecture point of view, as I mentioned, that the traffic through the internet is getting through the SSL with the secure protocols. We can share them with you. Is the AES, for instance, and many other RSA, etc. This tunnel is using TLS session over SSH, so it's additionally encrypted with the SSH. We are using the Alero Cloud Service communicate to each Alero connector using the unique public and private key authentication in a Let's Encrypt method. So as a result, we are sure that full certificates only will exist on the customer side Alero connector, and the private key is not stored on the Alero service. So it's, I think, very, very important here. So that the session is fully encrypted here in this SSL tunnel. We are using this Alero connector, which is on site in front of the Core PAS solution of CyberArk. And additionally, we are using either separated server, or it can be put into the same server as the Alero connector. We are using something called the HTML5 gateway. This is this guy who is responsible for encapsulating RDP traffic, which usually is establishes the PSM to this privileged session manager, which is isolating the session. So usually the first session will be RDP, and second session will be anything like SQL, next RDP, SSH, or whatever. We would like to encapsulate this first session in the SSL also to make it easier and more secure, to not open additional ports for the RDP. So we are using this HTML5 gateway. There is the full certificate trust between the solutions. So we should build the SSL trust between the solution, like Alero connector or HTML5 gateway to the PSM, but we are doing it during the deployment. Generally speaking, it makes life much easier from the, let's say, both sides, the customer perspective, but also third-party vendor perspective. And in my opinion, it couldn't be more secure because we have everything: the secure authentication, proper encryption, accountability, recording. Everything is there. So just to summarize it, also from the licensing perspective, the Alero is subscription license in CyberArk based on the amount of people, amount of employees, external employees who are registered in Alero service. So if we do have the, I will show you that maybe in my environment. You should be able to see my browser now. I'm logged in into my environment. I can get to the users. And sorry, I need to authenticate again first. So I will use my Alero mobile, scanning my face, scanning the QR code now. Okay. Just need to have the internet access. Just give me a second. I'm just opening the Alero application. Come on. Okay, now we are scanned. So now I'm redirected to the Alero service, and I can choose my tenant, which I would like to manage, and I have users. So as you see, we have many users here from our organization, and I can just deactivate user, activate user, register new user for internal, let's say, security admins or for some vendors. And actually the license is based on this amount of users. So if somebody is no longer with the third-party vendor in our organization, we can deactivate the account or we can just delete it, and then we have additional license value. This is the annual subscription model license for the Core PAS. So to give you a couple of minutes for the QA session, let's just summarize it with the Alero as the additional layer of the security. For CyberArk, we guarantee both zero trust access for remote vendors, so no shared secrets, no agents installed, so it's very easy to be used, as you've seen. There was only browser which was required for the third party to have an access, and only mobile device, modern, I would say, so usually used with the fingerprint or the face recognition authentication device, where we are able to install the Alero application with biometric authentication, very, very easy and very quick to be used. The just-in-time access means here that we don't need to create the user in many places to provision the user account properly. We are doing it in one place, and it's really, really fast. And additionally, we are using all of the features of the core privilege access security, which I assume most of you know from the market, as we are the privilege access security solution market leader. So I think CyberArk is quite recognized in the market of Core PAS. So we can just expand the functionality of the Core PAS solution in a very easy way for all of the third-party vendors who should have an access to the environment. Very easy and very, very secure. So that's it from my side for now. We have a couple of minutes left. So the question, do you have any questions, any doubts, anything you have in your mind? You can either ask this question on chat or just unmute yourself and ask the question.
Да, коллеги, если есть вопросы, можете написать в чат. Зададим, сразу ответим. Okay, Bartosz, looks like I have no questions so far, but anyway, if any questions will come to me, I will forward them to you and we'll answer together, okay?
Perfect, sounds like the plan. So thank you very much for your time today. I really appreciate it. If you have any questions,
one moment, we have one connection just coming out. Question from Yaroslav. Alero connector, is it a dedicated server, and how to integrate it with the PVWA?
Yeah, very, very good question. Thanks a lot for this. So actually the connector, it's run on the Docker container. So if you have any Docker in the organization, you can just use it. You just download from our resource the container with the Docker. You just execute it, and Alero connector wakes up. It's very simple. So how to integrate it with the PVWA? We recommend to install the next container on the same Docker, basically. So it's again the two commands which you need to type. Download the container with the HTML5 gateway from our resource and run it. And then you have these both, let's say, instances ready to go. And on the PVWA side, you need to do actually two things. First, let's say three things. First, you need to enable SAML authentication, because from the authentication perspective, the Alero service is getting to be the identity provider and PVWA is the service provider. So it's common SAML version 2 approach for the authenticating through the SAML language. So this is the first point for enabling the authentication. Second point, you need to copy, actually on the site level, I can share it with you. It's over here. If we will go to my site, so it's very easy. You can just click here the link and see, sorry, let's get back here. We have show configuration. you need to just copy these parameters, which is the trust basically set up between the identity provider and service provider. You are copying this data and put it to the web config of the PVWA. So then PVWA understands that the traffic from this identity provider is trusted. So it's very easy, as you see, it's just a copy-paste basically approach. And last but not least, on the PVWA level, you are just defining new PSM gateway for your PSM, which will be called this HTML5 gateway. And you specify that for this specific platforms, you would like to use not directly PSM, but PSM gateway, which is this HTML5 gateway in front. And basically, that's it from the PVWA side to integrate it with the connector. From the connector perspective, it's also very interesting. When you install this site, you see I have the one connector disconnected because my local environment is turned off now, but you can just generate new token. When you generate new token and you will install this Alero connector on-prem, just run the container, Docker container, you can type CLI commands of Alero connector, and one of them will be init, where you need to specify init and copy-paste this generated token into the Alero connector. And then what is also interesting, in the Ubuntu, you will have the QR code provided on the desktop, and you need to use your Alero application to have the second factor of the authenticating the Alero connector, that this is really working with the proper site in your infrastructure. And basically, if you do it, you are set up, you are fine with the installation. So if you would like to test it, if you would like to have the POC of the Alero service, it's really simple. So what you need to do, you just need to install the clean version of Ubuntu Server 18.04. Red Hat and CentOS are also supported, but I would say especially for the POC purposes, it's just the fastest way possible with the Ubuntu. And there are a couple of requirements what services should be open for the outbound SSL communication to download the connector, download the HTML5 gateway, download Docker, so on, with the Snap packages, for instance. And additionally, we just require 1 or 2 mobile phones. It would be great to have 2 to have the test. We can schedule even the remote session to install it. Usually it takes less than 1 hour, everything, to check the environment, install the containers, set it up with the PVWA, and you are ready to go. It's really so simple. So after 1 hour, you can start test, and you can test for how long you want the connectivity between the remote vendor and your environment. Very simple. I think is the quickest test possible here, and I think very effective. So if you would like to do it, just let us know, and we'll arrange it for you. Do you have any other questions?
Yes, we have questions. Can we upload users from Active Directory to Alero if customer wants to add a lot of employees in one moment?
If we would like to have so first of all, as I mentioned, we should separate the contractors from third-party vendors. If there is a lot of third-party vendors, so for the moment, the manual adding is the only option available. We are working also with this automation, either through the API or through some lists from AD. We don't want to integrate, for now at least, the Alero with RAD. The plan, which we are going to cover soon, I hope with the next release, but we will see, is to have the open LDAP authentication between the Alero service and the vault itself. So this is something we are working on. So if we will have the user created here, this user will be used for with the open LDAP, with this communication between the service and the Core PAS to use the user which was created here to get access to the PVWA. So this is something where we are working on and should be available soon. But with the existing AD, I haven't heard the plans for now to integrate it directly. Any other questions?
No, so far. So, looks like we can finish. Okay, thank you, Bartosz. Спасибо всем участникам, что вы сегодня к нам присоединились. Мы после вебинара, значит, мы разошлем всем материалы по этому решению, в том числе ссылку на запись сегодняшней сессии. Вот еще раз спасибо, всем хорошего дня.
Thank you very much. Have a great day. Спасибо. Bye-bye.